Welcome back to the Daily Dope Show. I'm your friend and host, Brando. um, so let's talk about Maine for a minute. If we all remember back in March when LePage vetoed, and then they overrode the veto, and then that was on July 9th where they overrode this veto and passed this law known as HP 1060 LD 1539. It's a mouthful, I know. All right, so Maine legislature overrode Republican Governor Paul LePage veto Monday, July 9th, 2018, and the state's medical cannabis law, LD 1539, and passed a bill that dramatically increases access to medical marijuana for patients and their caregivers. With a vote of 118 to 23, the House of Representatives, and a vote of 25 to 8 in the Senate, the state's elected officials have silently dismissed LePage's veto threat. Under the newly amended language, doctors will be legally allowed to recommend cannabis to patients for any purpose after the state's second special legislative session officially ends. Previously, only specific debilitating medical conditions such as cancer, HIV/AIDS, Alzheimer's disease, intractable pain, or epilepsy were necessary to qualify for a medical use designation. And this, my friends, is basically the trend that's starting, and I think it should sweep the nation, in my opinion. I got a lot going on in my mind and in my life because I live in Michigan and the laws are all changing and it's a big shakeup. While we're going the wrong way, a lot of people seem to be going the right way. And here's another way. Basically, everything that they're doing here and in Oklahoma with what they're trying to do with regulations there, is where medical marijuana's future lies. Like, it needs to be way more far wide open. There needs to not be any concern about arresting people for arbitrary little limits that they might be a little bit over, because that's bullshit. Like, if you have a plant count limit of like 50 plants, let's just say, and somebody just happens to have 80 plants at the time, I mean, that's not some kind of thing that's going to, this isn't some imminent public danger that we're talking about. Anyway, further, the new bill improves packaging safety standards and details how dispensaries may operate. The bill also clarifies the conditions under which medical cannabis patients, including children, may have someone else cultivate plants and administer medication for them. Caregivers may cultivate up to 30 mature plants and 60 immature plants for qualifying patients, who may possess up to 8 pounds of harvested marijuana. Not sure why they included the kilos there. But anyway, once the bill is fully implemented, the state's estimated 41,858 patients will be able to shop at any of the 14 licensed dispensaries. Something don't sound right there with that ratio, but we'll give them that. Municipalities will be restricted from prohibiting caregiver-operated dispensaries, marijuana testing facilities, and marijuana facilities. Did you hear that? All you other states that want to like neuter and corporatize or monopolize dispensaries and other businesses and allow municipalities to opt out. Because what we have in like Michigan with the medical marijuana, California with regular marijuana, recreational or whatever, and a couple other places that I've been reporting on over the last couple years, what we're seeing is that less than 5% of all municipalities are allowing facilities. And that's basically just saying, oh, well, marijuana is legal where it's legal. And that's just ridiculous. State Senate Eric Brakey, who served on Maine's Republican State Committee, noted in a tweet that passage of LD 1539 will make Maine's medical marijuana program even stronger by creating more access and choice for patients, more flexibility and legal marijuana businesses, and greater integrity for the overall program. Which to me is another one of the many, many signs and signals that the Republican Party is now the new marijuana party. Believe it or not. Maybe not in the sense that they're doing anything to legalize marijuana per se, and there's still a lot of prohibitionists, and there's still the Sessionses, and many other things that are happening that point to that not being a very accurate statement. I'll agree, but when I see this, and when I see people like the guy in Florida, whose name kind of evades me right now. Several Republicans in states that have legalized recreational marijuana have come out as being, at least for states' rights, and usually marijuana was the only thing that could be an exception for a Republican to have sympathy for states' rights. And, just basically a lot of the rhetoric coming out of certain Republican caucuses is pointing to the direction that they're willing to bury the hatchet on this issue. They're willing to do smart things sometimes. But, I mean, it's just, when people say that this is a partisan issue, it's not. This issue is still on the table. It's still wide open. And Democrats are still not grabbing it. They're still not biting. Not enough of them, and not in the right ways. They're using it as a political stunt. They're using it as a way to act like they're with the people, but really it's like through, promises of tax revenues and all these other things. And essentially they, when you grill them, they still sound like prohibitionists. And I can name like 5 of them right off the top of my head that are like that. Cuomo, Pelosi, and others. So the law specifically mandates that dispensaries may not be located within 500 feet of public or private school campuses, must provide appropriate security measures, and all dispensary officers or directors must be Maine residents. But while LD 1539 becomes law 90 days after the state's legislative session ends, an emergency piece of legislation sponsored by Brakey, LD 238, will take effect immediately. Brakey's legislation will establish a new kind of license for manufacturers to create medical cannabis extracts used in edibles, tinctures, and oils for patients. Additionally, LD 238, which is the temporary one that'll be in effect until the session ends and 90 days has passed, and that will allow accredited medical marijuana testing facilities to operate in the absence of rules being established by the Department of Health and Human Services. Why don't they do that in Michigan? Why didn't they do that in California? I mean, it's like, I think it's a lack of leadership and a total, like, the people making the rules and that are in charge of the rules, they're the ones that have, like, somebody holding their arm behind their back, like, so that's why we don't get common sense things. It's just a lack of leadership. All right, so allow qualified medical marijuana patients and their primary caregivers to manufacture marijuana products from harvested cannabis, including the production of marijuana extracts by a process that does not involve inherently hazardous substances, and restrict counties and cities from being able to prohibit or limit registered caregivers. This was the second time the Maine legislature handed LePage another defeat against his anti-cannabis stance. When on May 2nd, 2018, lawmakers also overrode the governor's veto of Question 1, which legalized adult use marijuana. So, yeah, that was May. I'm sorry, I said it was March. That was Monterey Bud who wrote that. So thank you for that article. And yeah, this all happened like a few days ago. I've been so busy this month that I'm just now getting on with it, with some of the more important stories that I've seen come through the pipeline. And this one's a good one, man. I'm really happy about the breaking the chains of LePage. And, just like we heard, people are talking about basically like when Trump came to office and put Sessions in there, it seemed like that was the fire under the ass of a lot of these um, these kind of things going on. And yeah, a lot has happened in the last 2 years, man. A lot has happened. So we're gonna keep following all these stories and stay tuned.